First guest to get the week started from Jackson College and the Science and Chemistry Department, Dr. Matthew Bedke. Hi Matt, welcome back.
Great to be here.
Yeah, most of our viewers are of the Morning Show, are familiar with Matt for all the years he's provided us with great information, particularly getting us through the pandemic. But his real life, you're a professor of science and chemistry.
Yep.
Got an event coming
Yes.
up that I think is very
Yes.
interesting. I'm very interested in biotechnology in healthcare.
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to come on and tell a little bit more about what we're going to be doing. So I was on the morning show, like you said, probably about a month ago, and we were talking about some advances in biotechnology, specifically this new treatment using this genetic editing system. And I came back and was speaking with some colleagues about it, and people started thinking about, well, what if we got actually some scientists together to talk about some of these additional advances, beyond just CRISPR? What else is going on that's really impacting healthcare right now? And so we started chatting a little bit more and just kind of getting some ideas down, and what we put together is this Biotechnology in Healthcare seminar. So we're going to be recruiting some folks from industry and from U of M who are scientists who are working out in the field, to have them come in, and we sort of divided up and had them choose a specific topic that they were more interested in and something closer to their research interests. And we're going to have them just share for a few minutes about sort of a general background, a little bit of helping people understand why this is an important technology, what's happening in healthcare and medicine, and then how that's really applicable to them.
So with all these high-powered scientists and all this advanced information, is it going to be over my head?
Right. And that's really the main thing that we have stressed to everyone, is we really want this to be a community event. The talks are going to be geared very much for anybody who's in the audience will be able to understand. We specifically have question and answer sessions after each of the talks, and then we're going to have a round table as well where people can just kind of toss out what are some other things you're thinking about, questions you might have related to healthcare and biotechnology, and we'll have the panel sort of address that and see what they're thinking and what their ideas are. So it's really meant for anybody. I don't want anybody to feel like they're going to come in and it's going to be like a very high-level scientific talk. These are going to be very general talks focusing on really how this is applicable to everybody.
Yeah, and it does have that application, but it's such a wide-ranging field. Is there a way you can even define biotechnology?
Right. I mean, really, it's such a broad area to really think about, but really, we're focusing for this on really looking at genetics. That's going to be a big component. So trying to understand, nowadays we have a tremendous amount of genetic information that is out there, but then how do we work with that, and how do we use that and learn things from that? We have things like epigenetics, which is a really fascinating area. The idea being that there can be changes that occur to your genetic material that don't involve direct changes to the actual sequence of DNA, but changes to other things that might be interacting with it, or things like that. And so people are starting to realize that it's a lot more complicated than just the A's, T's, C's, and G's that make up our genetic material. So I'm hopeful that people will be speaking a little bit more about that. And then we also have some other speakers talking about other aspects of biotechnology, things like our gut microbiome, how all of the bacteria that are normal, healthy bacteria that are in our guts might be influencing other things well outside of our guts, like our immune system or other areas of health. So I'm hoping that there's going to be sort of a wide-ranging talk that certainly doesn't encompass all of biotechnology, but hits on a couple important aspects right now.
I know there are a lot of people interested in what biotechnology can do in the way of being a prediction of your future health status, even your lifespan. That's
Right.
part of biotechnology.
Absolutely, and that's something that I do hope our speakers will be touching on a little bit is, like I was saying, we are starting to get some ideas about how we might be able to use our genetic information, and as genetic sequencing becomes cheaper and cheaper, we're having more and more information out there that's telling us things like, well, we have a higher likelihood of developing this disease when we're older maybe, or something like that. But it's important to remember that that doesn't mean for sure that we will get that disease. It's just a higher, genetic predisposition. So, a lot of interesting ethical questions with that, right? Like, there are some things that, do you want to know that you are at a higher risk for this? If it's something that you can't do anything about, doesn't matter that you know that. Are you going to do something differently? Whereas I feel like, if there's something like, you're at a higher likelihood of developing diabetes when you get older. And somebody can look at that when they're 25 and say, okay, I'm going to make some changes to how I do things now to be able to delay that or maybe even prevent that change from occurring. So, it really depends on, I think, what the specific issue is that we're talking about as far as genetics. But yeah, I think there's so many interesting ethical things to think about when it comes to that information that we have.
Yeah, I think it scares a lot of people because, if someone were to ask you, would you want to know,
Right.
how old you're going to be when you die? And if you did have that information, it could change your life, and ultimately you could get hit by a bus
Right.
before that even happened.
Right, right. So, like I said, that's one of the other challenging things here is that these are sort of predictions about what could happen. And it's not necessarily, if you have a higher likelihood of developing cancer, it doesn't mean that you for sure will get cancer. It just means that, there are some genetic sort of markers that we can look at and say this leads to more people developing this disease. And again, that's, I think, a really interesting topic that I hope, we can get a little bit of discussion on. We're really wanting to have community engagement with this as well. It's really not going to be set up like a real formal series of talks, and we're hoping that these are going to be very interactive with the audience.
With things like genealogy websites, they depend on crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
Well, do you see that as the future of biotechnology, that everyone needs to participate for that information to be valid?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting thing to think about, and from a personal standpoint, people can think about, what might be gained from knowing that information. But then you also have the issue of, is that genetic information now potentially out there, and is there going to be potential problems if that information does get out there in the future, right? I mean, the scenario that a lot of times you think about would be things like, somebody has a genetic test done and they find they're at a higher likelihood of a disease. What happens when your, life insurance gets a hold of that information?
Right.
How is that going to impact something like that? So there's so many issues that can come up as far as when you have that information out there. So if you're getting that done, where is it being stored? Is that safe? Is it secure? Right? We see breaches that occur all the time where people's information are being, discovered by people who are trying to use it for nefarious reasons. So is your genetic information going to be potentially used in that same way in the future? Again, it's just an interesting thing to think about. We're not really there yet, but...
Yeah, I think there is a lot of fear, and really because we see things like Elon Musk implanting chips in people's brains. There's a fear that people are going to have control over somebody else's body or information, or and I think we went through that with the vaccines. People were just fearful.
Yeah, I mean, certainly anytime you have something new, there's going to be some fear associated with that. And I think one of the things we're really trying to focus on here are medicines and healthcare that have been approved, that are out there. So we're trying not to go too far out with, kind of crazy new stuff that might be coming down the road, but let's think about what are some drugs like the CRISPR-Cas9 that I talked about last month, where that is out there, it's been approved, it's available. So hopefully we'll be focusing a little more on some of those approved drugs that people can actually hear about and go to their doctor in the future and potentially get.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's here now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so this biotechnology and healthcare seminar is for you. I plan on being there myself next Tuesday at Burt Walker Hall, and it's free.
Free and light refreshments provided, so it should be a great time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for putting this on, and I'll be anxious to hear from all the experts that you're assembling.
Great.
Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Dr. Matt Becky from Jackson College, professor of science and chemistry, with this cool biotechnology and healthcare seminar.